Over the past 4 decades, Tom Cruise has turned Mission Impossible into one of the greatest action film series of all time, a franchise that continuously has pushed the possibilities of what a modern blockbuster could be, and found new terrifying ways to put Cruise into harm's way for our amusement. After an intriguing start to the series with a stretch of directors like Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, and Brad Bird, Cruise found his match with Christopher McQuarrie, who has helmed this series since 2015's Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. Despite the majority of the films involving Cruise's Ethan Hunt being considered a rogue by the Impossible Missions Force, IMF, and despite the series pulling the same dang face mask trick on us over and over again, Mission Impossible series has been consistently exciting, and because of Cruise's dedication to bonkers stunts, this series has always felt more tactile, more real, more dangerous than your standard action film. The seventh and latest installment in this series, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, comes 5 years after the last film, Mission Impossible: Fallout, which felt like both a culmination of everything that came before it, and in many ways the pinnacle of what this series could be. Coming off that high, Dead Reckoning Part 1 has a lot to live up to, especially when you consider that over these last few decades, Mission Impossible has continuously set the bar high for itself and action films in general. Compared to other blockbuster action films, especially in a year that's given us several disappointments already, Dead Reckoning Part 1 is still an impressive feat from both Cruise and McQuarrie. But after the apex that was Fallout, and coming after some of the most impressive action films ever made, the newest film can't help but feel like somewhat of a disappointment. Dead Reckoning Part 1 acts as the beginning of the goodbye for Tom Cruise as this series' protagonist, while also setting up who could follow in his footsteps, and making this film a sort of jumping-off point for those new to the franchise. Dead Reckoning Part 1 has Ethan Hunt and the IMF trying to track down a sentient AI called the Entity, which would essentially give the owner power to control the world. However, this enemy that can be anywhere is unlike anything Hunt and his team have ever faced, leading Hunt to come face to face with Gabriel, who share a past that made Hunt the man he is today. In order to stop the Entity, Hunt's mission involves finding 2 keys that, when combined, unlock something that seems extremely important to the Entity. On Hunt's hunt for the Entity and the keys, he is again joined by Leather and Benji, and his paths cross once more with Ilsa Faust. Hunt also meets Grace, Haley Atwell, a thief who gets in over her head when she gets in the way of Hunt's goals. Dead Reckoning Part 1 also sees the return of Henry Czerny's Eugene Kittredge, who hasn't been in this series since the first Mission Impossible, and introduces us to Paris, who is hunting down Ethan on behalf of Gabriel, as well as Jasper and Degas, who is also trying to hunt down Ethan, but for different reasons. One of the most noticeable differences in this latest film, almost right from the beginning, is how convoluted and explained everything often feels. An early meeting scene has Eugene Kittredge explaining to Denlinger, Carrie Elwes, and the audience exactly what the threat is, who Hunt is, and what the IMF does. And while it's clear this scene exists for newcomers to this series, it also is far heavier on the exposition than these movies usually are. And while these movies often center around a MacGuffin that Hunt and the antagonist are fighting over, it's never felt as Byzantine as it is here. There are double and triple crosses, misdirection, and even a surprising amount of close-up magic, all of which make this quest for the keys more complex than it probably needs to be. Did the entire first part of this 2-part movie really need to be about finding these keys? Only time will tell once Part 2 is released. But the story is secondary to great action sequences in Mission Impossible, and Dead Reckoning Part 1 shows this series still delivers. A chase through Venice that puts Ethan and Grace into the tiniest car possible continuously builds the stakes and excitement, while also managing some pretty solid comedic moments between the two. While the film's major train set piece that has been teased forever does use more CGI than one would expect from a Mission Impossible film, it's the way that McQuarrie directs this sequence that makes it work quite well, as naturally, everything that could go wrong does go wrong. Mission Impossible has often relied on tension in these action scenes, as we watch Tom Cruise do truly mind-boggling stunts for the amusement of the audience. Yet Dead Reckoning Part 1 makes this tension work even better outside the extravagant set pieces. For example, one scene at an airport balances new character introductions, Jasper and Dacus trying to find Hunt, while Leather and Benji have their own little side adventure. McQuarrie mixes all of these elements in a way that makes walking through an airport actually electrifying. Another scene on the aforementioned train shows us that all the mysterious allegiances and twists of character motivations happening within the train are just as captivating as Cruise's attempts to almost kill himself to get on top of the moving locomotive. Even though the script by McQuarrie and Eric Jenderson can often be a bit too overwritten, it's in these smaller-scale action scenes that build and build, adding new elements at every turn, where we can see the excitement inherent in the screenplay.